You can't do that. She's unfazed. Hello, my loves, and welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you're new. Hi, hello, my name is Loey, and today I have some really creepy, true Halloween horror stories to share with you guys. Welcome to October. All of this month is spooky. All of this month is pretty much Halloween. It is a 30-day celebration that I cannot believe is passing by so quickly. If you love scary stories and spooky things, this is absolutely the video for you. So sit back, get something hot to drink, and maybe turn off the lights or leave them on depending on how brave you are, and let's get into these stories. I have an app that records sleep cycles, and if you talk or snore in your sleep, it will record it to play back when you wake up. At 3:30 a.m. last Halloween, you heard me saying, "Huh?" with a man's voice saying something in the background. I lived by myself. Oh, this is why I will not leave on apps when I fall asleep. I will not record anything when I fall asleep. I will not set up cameras. I will not set up voice recording software. I don't want to know what's out there. I will stay in my bubble of denial and I will like it, thank you. When I was younger, my friends and I went trick-or-treating. We passed a man who stood still with a mask on, holding a lantern. As we walked past him, he turned his whole body around and followed us with his eyes. We were so creeped out, but there were plenty of people around, so we made our way to the next house. My friends and I saw him again as we made our way from house to house, and he seemed to be following us. In typical horror story form, he walked so slow we couldn't figure out how he kept up with us. At one house, when we hadn't seen him for a while, we got our candy. As we turned around to walk back to the street, the masked man stood in the road waiting for us. Immediately, we knocked on the door and told the owners of the house about it. The masked man continued walking down the street and we didn't see him again that night. Later on, an adult friend of the family told us he heard the masked man say, "I'm looking for souls." That is chilling. Like, it makes you wonder why he was following them, and I don't want to know the answer. Again, I will stay in my denial bubble as long as I can. I was in line at a store checking out and I saw a creepy little clown head decoration. Naturally, I told my friend I hate clowns. I felt a tap on my shoulder, so I turned around and a clown looked down at me and whispered in my ear, "But we love you." Oh my god, I hate clowns too. I hate clowns. I want to do an entire video on clowns, creepier than Pennywise by a long shot. Oh my god, clowns scare the crap out of me. I would have pooped my pants and then run out. For as long as I can remember, I've had an irrational fear of Michael Myers from the Halloween movies. I was out driving to pick up a friend on Halloween night, and I stopped at a red light. I was the third car from the front when someone dressed in one of the best Michael Myers costumes ever emerged from the first car with a massive knife. He casually walked up to the car in front of us and started banging on the windshield and doors, trying to get into the car. I absolutely freaked out. The light eventually turned green and I sped off as fast as I possibly could. I have no doubt in my mind that I would have run that person down if they got in my way. Agreed. That is the dumbest thing. Like, even if you're pulling a prank doing something like that, you're gonna wind up getting like killed or hit by a car or something, because that's too scary. Last year, I went trick-or-treating and I rang on the doorbell of this one house. No one answered, but the light was on, so of course I rang it again. Through the door window, I saw an old lady peeking through. The creepy part was her nails looked like a wolf's claws, and her big dog was growling. The lady literally barked at her dog and it stopped. She stared at me with her beady eyes and I ran. Oh my god. I was 14 years old at a Halloween party with some friends and my older brother. We all decided to play this game from Brazil similar to Ouija. At one point I said it was complete bull and claimed my friend had moved the pen and made the whole thing up. He then let go of the pen and it started moving by itself. I went from happy to absolutely dead. The spirit, or whatever that thing was, introduced himself as Machado and claimed he was killed in an electric chair for murdering his family. But before he was killed, he was tortured and someone cut off his feet. The spirit said he wanted my feet and proceeded to describe my clothes and my shoes. He said he'd cut them off next time I took a shower. I was completely scared, and as you can imagine, I didn't take a shower for weeks. I would have died from poor hygiene. I would have taken baths for the rest of my life before I ever took a shower again. When I was in college, my friend and I went to a creek where other kids would hang out and have a few beers. The creek was in the woods and down a long brush-filled path. When it came time for us to leave around 2 a.m., we started walking down that long path. We were a quarter of the way down when we saw someone just standing in the path about 200 feet away. We could only see the silhouette of a man standing. We stopped and waited for him to move, but he suddenly took off into the woods. Needless to say, we were scared and went back to the creek. Again, like, Halloween is just so freaky because I think that people do things and think that they can get away with more than they should, and whether they're joking or being serious, it's kind of a time of year where when you do anything spooky, you can get away with it. I was walking in my backyard and saw a man hanging from the clothesline. I did a double take and looked back, but he was gone. I studied abroad in England with my friends, and one Halloween we decided to go to a supposedly haunted pub. We heard a story at the pub about a young pickpocketer who died there, and how guests at the pub would often feel someone tugging on their pants or jackets. My friends and I had a pretty normal experience at the pub. We went into the haunted bathroom and sat at the haunted bar, but we didn't have any particularly paranormal experiences. However, on our way home, I noticed there was something in the pocket of my jacket. Now, mind you, my pockets were empty and I kept my jacket next to me the entire night. I opened the pocket to discover a small hole in the lining of my jacket, in which was a butter knife from the haunted pub. I was entirely freaked out and I asked all of my friends repeatedly if it was a joke, and they all denied it. My jacket was relatively new, and since it was on the chair the entire night, I definitely would have noticed if someone ripped a hole and shoved a knife in it. Don't taunt spirits, kids, especially when you go to areas that have a lot of folklore behind them and you tease things and say, well, if it's really haunted, you would do something. You know, when you taunt things like that, obviously stuff is gonna happen to you. And I'm glad that it was not anything other than a butter knife and didn't hurt him. I was in bed trying to sleep when I heard scratching at my closet door. I figured it was my cat, so I ignored it. Then I realized she was lying next to my feet and the door started creaking. I tried to convince myself that the door was just making house sounds, and I snuggled my cat to calm me down. The door then opened by itself and slowly creaked open, like some kind of generic horror movie. I panicked and held onto my cat for dear life before running to the opposite side of the room to turn on the light. My light was left on for about a week after that. I blame so many noises that I hear on my animals, and the worst thing is when I know I'm alone in a room or I know that they're all in a different part of the house and I hear something. And I'm just gonna pray it's the mouse that lives here, even though we don't have any mice. I'm gonna pray there is one. When I was 12 years old, around 7:30 p.m. on Halloween, my best friend and I were home alone watching The Nightmare Before Christmas when someone knocked on the window. The curtains were closed and some of our neighborhood friends lived a few doors down, so we didn't think much of it. Eventually, we decided to open her curtains just in case they came back. Everything was normal until about 30 minutes later, when there was another knock on the window. We both turned around just in time to see the back end of a Scream costume walking away. We thought it was one of our friends playing a prank on us, so we ignored it and continued watching the movie. The next day, we called our friends who we thought pulled the prank, and it turned out they were visiting their grandmother and weren't home at all on Halloween. We never figured out who was in the costume. Again, that is just a big old pile of nope. In university, I lived in what was called the Village, which was essentially a bunch of flat-styled houses for students out in the bush. 4 of my friends and I were watching a scary movie in the TV room with the lights off, and at one point I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I turned my head slightly from my place on the couch to see the silhouette of a bearded man just standing in the doorway watching us. He was older, ragged, and definitely not a student. I was frozen in terror, but I didn't want to scream to scare everyone else, so I closed my eyes and waited a few seconds to open them when I felt calm. The door was clear. Is it so sad that I think around Halloween time I'm more scared of real things than I am scared of like paranormal stuff? Like the thought that that man was a killer who had gotten into their building somehow, or I don't know, just someone with like bad intentions is scarier to me than it being a ghost. Back in high school, I was hanging out in the schoolyard with some friends during lunch. One of my buddies spotted a roll of duct tape in the grass and decided to throw it into the air. By complete fluke, it hit a crow in the neck, causing it to fall to the ground in pain. My friend started crying when he realized what happened. The sun immediately went away and storm clouds formed directly above us. Out of nowhere, a huge flock of crows emerged and began cawing loudly as they circled over our heads in the pouring rain. 2 minutes later, the crows flew away and the sun returned. We all stood there in silence for a few more minutes in utter disbelief until one of the observers asked, did that really just happen? By far, one of the weirdest and creepiest things I've ever experienced. A guy fell from a window above the lot I was parked in, snapped his neck on the hood of my truck, and died. The spooky part was that I ominously predicted it, saying, the only way someone can hit me in this spot is from the right or from above. 2 hours later, I was giving my contact information to a cop with bloody gloves next to a corpse. There you guys go. Those are some super duper creepy Halloween horror stories that will probably leave you guys wanting to stay home and watch Netflix rather than go trick-or-treating this year. I know I've talked about it a lot, and it's just because I'm so excited. If you guys love scary stories, you will love my new book, Haunted in Hollywood. It comes out on November 14th and is still available for pre-order. I will have a link for you down below so you can go and pre-order it and check it out. Thank you guys so much for your love and support. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I love you all so much, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.